My guest needs no introduction to the WDHA audience, but I will introduce him anyway. He was a program director and air personality and is directly responsible for me being here. Lenny Bloch, it is great to have you back with us here at WDHA.
Mr. Monahan, it is a pleasure to be back on the New Jersey airwaves with you, my friend, and you look great. Now, this is an audio recording. Is this going to be part of your show? What's the deal on that? Or
Yeah,
are we
no,
gonna...
this is audio, video, it's all of it, pal.
Oh,
Oh, we're
really? So
multimedia these days.
let me makeup. Can makeup come? I need a lot of makeup. Anyway, it's really great to see you and great to be part of DHA again.
Back in November of 1998, Lenny brought me onto the air at WDHA, and it was your idea to do All Mixed Up, which has been on the air since.
And I could not think of a better host for that type of show. And coming from all different musical directions and being able to seamlessly meld them all together, you're truly you're a professor in that regard for
Well,
sure.
thank you.
You bet.
When we got the news of the passing of Bob Weir last weekend, Lenny, you were one of the first couple of people that I thought of because I know of your love for the Grateful Dead and their music. What was it that first brought you to the Grateful Dead?
Summer Camp 1973, Camp Seneca Lake, the Middle Finger Lake in the Finger Lakes. And I'm 17 at the time, so you can do the fuzzy math there. Um, and I'm a kitchen boy at this great camp that I was actually a camp rat for years. And the head counselor or the head of the camp comes to me, Lenny, there's a bunch of hippies down by the waterfront. What's going on? I said, oh, they've got that jam, that summer jam down at Watkins Glen, which was at the southern end of Seneca Lake. It's the Grateful Dead, the band, and the Allman Brothers. So along with that, I had a friend whose real name was Robert Hunter. There was Robert and Billy Hunter, who were two of the kitchen boys from Rochester, New York. And Bobby had the Skull and Roses album. It stayed on the turntable that entire summer, one side or the other. So that was my full blown indoctrination into, oh, those are the guys that are playing down the lake. I knew of the band. It's 73 already. So Working Man's Dead and American Beauty and a lot of the big records that had been out. And I was kind of a casual listener, not, I was certainly not a deadhead, but that summer kind of, that's the summer I got on the bus, if you will. We couldn't get close to the concert. We tried walking down Route 14, which is now lined with vineyards. There was one vineyard at the time, I think it was called Canandaigua, but the crowds were overwhelming. So I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything, but I still consider that my first show.
Like
So,
you, I think I first came to them via the albums like American Beauty and Working Man's Dead, the short form songs, if you were.
right.
And those were the ones that first caught my ear. And I liked that, I guess, that roots feel, that Americana feel that is still being felt these days in so much of American music.
I'm actually quite glad I was not part of the late 60s psychedelic era. That was not my thing. So kind of the country side of things brought me into them. And I read somewhere that it was David Crosby that said something to Jerry about, the psychedelic thing, maybe you should try this country. Well, they both sound the same probably, but you should try, maybe bring a little bit of the country vibe into you, like the Byrds had done and like the Buffalo Springfield had done before them. And I guess they got the memo because those are the two real breakout albums, I guess, right? American Beauty and Working Man's Dead. And probably your old radio station was, I don't know how deep they were into the Live Dead, the live psychedelic other one and the 11 and all the old stuff from that Live Dead album. But I want to say that I remember them playing American Beauty stuff and Working Man's Dead. Those are the two that kind of brought them into the forefront.
You mentioned Jerry, and there's a quote that I found, Lenny, talking about Bob Weir. This is some years ago in an interview. I believe it was with David Gans. At any rate, Jerry said, I don't know anybody else who plays the guitar the way he does, he being Bob Weir, with the kind of approach that he has to it. That in itself is, I think, really a score, considering how derivative almost electric guitar playing is. With Weir, I have a real hard time recognizing any influences in his playing that I could put my finger on and say, well, that's something that Weir got from X and such. Even though I've been along for almost all of his musical development, I've been playing with him since he was 16 or 17. And I thought that really kind of captured the essence of Bob Weir's playing because, much like Jerry, who you really couldn't kind of pigeonhole, Bob had his own very unique style, mostly rhythm in the early days, all rhythm
Right,
really,
right,
until
right.
Jerry's passing. And then the torch was carried by Bob.
Right. That's a phenomenal quote, and I've never heard that before. I must tell you that David Gans and I have a bit of a history because when your old station went a different musical route, you dropped the Grateful Dead hour, and we picked that up at WDHA and went with,
Hmm.
went with the Dead for a number of years. But um, that morning, the morning that Bob died, I had a friend over, a friend from my New Mexico days, which was that before? That was before DHA. But I was living in New Mexico in Albuquerque, and I have had a friend over here for 45 years, and he's a big deadhead. We actually went to the Sphere together 2 years ago, and I put on. There's a new release called Merry and Grateful. It's a bunch of Grateful Dead live recordings, all recorded in the month of December, different years. And they're going from, I think, China Cat into I Know You Rider. And I'm listening and go, oh my God, listen, that's weird. Doing all these really intricate semi leads. It's in between rhythm and leads. And my take on that is now with him gone, next time you listen to some live Grateful Dead, try and pick out Bobby. It's easy to pick out Jerry,
Yes.
but if you can pick out Bobby, he does stuff like Jerry said that no one else really, you can't compare him to anybody. I know Bobby has said he learned a lot from the jazz pianist McCoy Tyner in his phrasing and his and maybe his style and in where he went, the spaces he filled with that playing. But I now find it a challenge to listen to live Grateful Dead music and listen for more of Bobby's stuff.
I'm wondering if going forward, what will happen? There's only a couple of members of the Dead who are still alive at this point. We lost Phil not that long ago. Jerry's been gone over a decade now, much more than a decade. What am I talking about? But I'm thinking, Lenny, there's a really short list of guitar players who might be in some way, shape, or form able to carry on this legacy. One would be Trey Anastasio from Fish, Warren Haynes, who has a relationship with the Dead, and maybe John Mayer, who also has a relationship. And I can't think of anybody else right off the top of my head.
The old school, I shouldn't say the old school, the newer deadheads, the Dead and Company deadheads, they're calling Mayer out. They're saying, John, you got to keep we'll come. And I think, and I forget which musician told me this, or I read this somewhere. Maybe it was Dylan who said, I'll keep playing as long as people are buying tickets. People will buy tickets to see whether it's Mayer and O'Teal on bass, and I don't know how much longer Mickey has left, Mickey Hart as a player.
Hmm.
But there will definitely be some type of incarnation, in my opinion, whether they call it, what did I see? Somebody online was saying, dead forever. And we've heard Bobby in interviews within the last couple of years say the music is really he wants the music to live on for 300 years. And I think their songbook certainly has that possibility. I equate them a lot to the band, to Robbie Robertson's writing. And you mentioned it before. There is that slice of Americana that definitely was inherent in that early 70s Grateful Dead music, and it carried through to Black Muddy River and some of the later Jerry things. I also got to mention that Bobby's passing was incredibly emotional for me, and it really made me think of when Jerry died. And I was at WDHA in 95, and I was in the lobby, and a record company fella came in and said, "Did you hear?" I go, "No." He goes, "Garcia died." We it's like we fell to the floor. It was almost like a 9/11 moment. I hate to bring that analogy up, but it was very emotional. Terry Carr and I immediately went on the air and we opened up the phone lines. Jim, it was therapy for deadheads. People were crying. We probably stayed on the air for a good 6, 7 hours playing dead and just taking phone calls. It was that I remember. And here we are 31 years later. And there's a, hate to say a finality to it, but I thought that era was kind of over when Jerry died. Now I do feel like there's a portion of that certainly that has died. Maybe it's our youth. Maybe it's just maybe it's just our youth that's dead because I'm not young anymore. So maybe it's the passing of that time that has been really emotional for me. And I'm really glad I had a good friend of 45 years at my house when we heard the news about Bobby.
Not to get too morbid here, but I saw an interview over the past couple of days as I was going through different things on Bob Weir and the Grateful Dead. And Bob was quoted as saying, "Death is where the adventure starts because we don't know what's going to happen. Is it over? Is there an afterlife? We have no idea." So he said, death is where the adventure starts. He called it a liberation. And then he said, "I look forward to dying. And one of these days, I'm going to get around to it." And sadly enough, that day has come. And, you
Wow.
wonder, like, what is on the other side?
Well, and I would say if anyone can imagine that and have a deep enough thought process to imagine that, it's got to be Bobby. He was always, more of the mystical of the Deadheads, just like George was the what do they say, the smart beetle or the who no, or the spiritual beetle.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
Bobby was probably the spiritual. Jerry and Billy were the pranksters. Um, Mickey was the rabbi, and, uh, and Phil was the real musician in the group. Uh, and everyone else kind of just played along. But yeah, what is on the other side? I read that too, where he was like very welcoming of it. And isn't that, maybe that's a lesson to all of us that death is something not to be afraid of because you're right, we don't know. And I think a lot of the time that fear is in the unknown. I think in our day-to-day lives, just not knowing how's the job going to be? How are my kids going to be? How's the world going to be? Uh, that fear of not knowing sometimes can be overwhelming. So Bobby, I think taught us a lesson in that, and I could very well think that way the rest of my life and not be afraid of what's on the other side. You know, a friend of mine said, "Oh, it won't be long before you see the memes on Facebook of Jerry up in heaven with the hand out." It was like 10 minutes
Oh,
later.
within,
I
yeah,
saw,
yeah.
I saw, Jerry, hey, welcome, and then the other members of the band, and there's Pigpen, and there's Janis Joplin, and everybody's just waiting for Bobby to take the step. I'll tell you what, he was. I don't know. Was he the youngest member of the
I
band?
believe he was. He came in at like
Yeah,
16 or 17.
I think he was the youngest member of the
Yeah.
band. Um, and he always did have a youthfulness to him, and he was the good-looking one. I read somewhere, I think it was Bob Lefsetz, who's an old record company guy
Yes,
who wrote
it was
who
Bob.
wrote
I
a
know the article you're talking
Do
about.
you know
Yes.
that piece?
Yes.
And he said something about, well, he was pretty much, this is it, it's done. But he also approached it from, hey, I'm older too. I'm in my 70s or whatever. And uh, I thought Bob's piece was really good too. I don't know how the public can access that, but he's a record company guy. The Left Sets Letters, I think, is his piece. And I would urge some deadheads to read that. I thought it's a good piece on Bobby. But yeah, moving to the other side of Grateful Deadism.
Well, as
Um,
I said when we started, you were one of the first people I thought of, and I'm so grateful that you were able to use a pun there, I guess a little bit. So grateful and thankful that you were able to take some time out as we celebrate the memory and the legacy of Bob Weir this morning on DHA. Be well, my friend.
Jim, always a pleasure indeed. And I will, let's stick around a little bit so we can see each other like this and not, we don't want to talk about the afterlife just yet.